Good afternoon, ladies, gents and Pikachus. This is a quick video about God versus Allah, as in the words that we use. The reason I bring this up is because many Muslims across the world are under this false impression. They think the word Allah, rather than being the name of the deity of Islam, they think Allah is a blanket term which applies to all gods. They think God is a oneness. So they think Yahweh, Christ, Tammuz, Buddha, everyone who worships anyone as if they have supernatural powers, all of those beings are actually Allah. And the way that they prove this is because in their countries, anyone who does worship a god, regardless of whether that god is Allah or not, anyone who worships a supernatural power must by law use the word Allah. They must say Allahu Akbar when they're worshipping their respective gods. And because this is the law, punishable by execution, it's called apostasy. If you're an apostate in a Muslim country, you're either going to be executed via hanging or beheading, or if you're a resident of another country, you won't be executed, but you will have your hands and your feet removed, cut off on opposite sides. So you can imagine people of varying faiths, when they're in these countries, or if they are unfortunate enough to be resident and live in those countries, then they're going to say that Allah is God. They're going to say Allahu Akbar rather than face beheading or dismemberment, which is what would happen. So because of this, Muslims now mistakenly think that Allah means God to everyone else. And if you think that to its conclusion, that means that Muslims with that belief in their head, when they think of us in our countries worshipping our God, because we don't say Allah, A, we're not actually worshipping our God, we're just worshipping nothing. B, we are blaspheming. And we are apostates who deserve to be killed. And that is why, when they send their missionaries, i.e. their jihadis here, and they kill us, they think it's perfectly okay and that it's justified because we, as apostates, have blasphemed Allah, God. But the thing they don't realise is, in their language, Allah does mean God, and because their language is centered around Quran worship. So in Quran worship, there is no other God. Allah is all the gods. That is why they came to that conclusion, and why they think it's okay to murder other people in the name of Allah who don't say Allahu Akbar, and why Christians in Islamic countries will call God Allah. In the Bible, it says, don't deny God apart from if your life is threatened. And it also says you should do what the laws of the country you are in do. Even in the Old Testament it says that. And there's many examples in the book of Moses where when Christians and Jews are in other countries, they don't do the things they would do in their own countries. They follow the customs of that country. And these are things like stoning people to death, burning people to death. They do those things and they support those things when they are in the countries of other faiths, because they were told to, for their own good. But regardless, when they're back in their home countries, and when we are here in Europe and Britain and in America, Allah does not mean God here. Allah means Allah specifically. It's not a blanket term. And when we speak of God, God isn't a blanket term. God doesn't mean Buddha. God doesn't mean Shiva. God doesn't mean Osiris. God only means God, the Father. And therefore, when you're a Christian and you're saying the Lord, you're speaking to Jesus Christ. You're not speaking to Allah, who is the Lord of Islam. You're not speaking to Buddha, which is the Lord of Buddhists. There's none of this blanket term stuff, because a blanket term means oneness. Christians don't believe in a oneness. Christians believe that Jesus Christ is the divine spirit. There is no other divine spirit, only Jesus Christ. And that's why when Muslims turn up on my page angrily shouting and remonstrating to say Allah means God, they don't realise they are speaking of paganism. Because paganism is a system under whereby previous gods and supernatural beings can be reborn into different forms and names, which is a oneness. That is not monotheism, as I said in a previous video. So in conclusion, does Allah mean God in Islamic countries? Yes, it does. And does Allah include all other supernatural beings in the description of God in those countries? Yes, it does. But does that mean we here are worshipping Allah? No, it absolutely does not. And does it mean when we say God here in our language, we are describing Allah? Absolutely not. Allah, for us, is the worship of a separate creature who is not God. And we know this because Allah uses as his symbol the crescent moon and the star, which they took from an older religion, which was the worship of Baal Hadad. And we know, I've done a separate previous video about it, why they started using that. Because at the time of that religion, in the heavens, things were different. You know, over time, the stars and planets have moved. Back in that time, the reason they used the star and the crescent was because the star, the star in the west, is what we call it. The star in the west was the head of the bull, because it looked like a bull shape. And the horns were the top of the crescent moon. And at that point, the western star was appearing below the moon. So when you had a crescent moon, you could literally see the shape of a bull of light in the sky. And they worshipped that to be Baal Hadad, using the crescent moon and the star, because they knew that's what was creating that shape. And that is why, in the Egyptian pantheon, on the head of Osiris, Horus and Isis, and later Set, you will find those on their heads. And that's the proof of it. The oldest statues in these countries, in Egypt especially, those are not statues of Allah. They didn't worship Allah at that point because Allah had not been created yet. But these days, when people worship Allah, they are saying those things and the divinity that those things created was actually Allah. So they backdate Allah to include those faiths, and they say that the reason why those faiths had the crescent moon and the star is because they were secretly worshipping Allah, which is the same as what they say about us. But we don't use the crescent moon and the star. Only the Catholic Church have started to use that. And that's because the Catholic Church also believe in a oneness, whereby the divinity of Christ is removed, and Christ is now just a regular guy who is a prophet, who is equal or below Mohammed. Now ask yourself, why would the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, why would they specifically remove the divinity of Christ, Jesus Christ I'm talking about here, not the false Christ? Why would the Pope mandate that it's illegal, it's an act of violence if you're in an Islamic country and you mention Jesus Christ as your Lord, if you speak of God without saying Allah? Why would the Catholic Church mandate those things to be the case? Whereas in this country, when we are Christians, we know that Jesus Christ is the Lord of divinity. He is the guy that we follow. We're not worshipping Allah. Just ask yourself that. Why would that be the case? And why, if Islamic countries were so sure of what they were saying to be the truth, why would they introduce a law of apostasy whereby if you don't agree with that openly and say that, no matter what faith you're from, your head and your arms and legs could be removed? And that's the end of this video. Just something for you to think about, so I hope you learned something. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. And just so you know, the star in the west, who is part of the Star and Crescent logo, the Star of the West is what we call Lucifer, the false Christ. So anyway, that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed that. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.